Yeah. So good morning, people who joined from Canada. I know a couple of people joined from Canada, Dr. Shankar and a few more. And good evening for all the people joined from India. And it's one of very it's privilege for CIC for for such a eminent person and stalwart like Dr. Andy has agreed to address it to CIC. And it is more than a speaker. He is very good friend of CIC, I would say. So I have visited personally twice to Saskatchewan. And Saskatchewan is a golden place for the golden opportunities. And also I would like to thank Dr. Shankar, who is instrumental in building relationship between CIC as well as Innovation Saskatchewan. We have long plans to go. And I think you have already read the profile of Mr. Andy. So he has a lot of technology management experience, especially from starting from a diplomat to trade relations and whatnot. So he is a very right personality to address the audience today. And just to give a quick brief about who joined today, especially who doesn't know about CIC. So CIC is Crescent Innovation Incubation Council. We are,
Sir, I think we have an audio issue.
Yes, we've lost the speaker.
Okay. Let me just see if I can reconnect. In the meantime, I'll just pick it up from where Mr. Parvez dropped. CIC is Crescent Innovation and Incubation Council. We are an incubation center based out of Crescent University in Chennai. Our primary thrust areas are life sciences and industry 4.0. However, we encourage startups across multiple domains as well. Right now, at present, we have over 36 incubatees, and we also support the next generation entrepreneurs in terms of helping students with their startups. So we have 21 student startups also at Crescent. In terms of funding, we have helped through government grants and private equity. Government grants through the government of Tamil Nadu and the central government is amounting to rupees 70 lakhs at present, and we're also continuously trying to help our startups even during this time. In terms of private equity, we've raised over 39 crores for our startups. And Parvez sir, if you want to add anything else. Parvez sir, there, can you hear me?
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. But yes, Andy, now the floor is yours. Please go ahead, and then so we can take the questions at the end once you finish the presentation.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Parvez, and thank you for all those kind remarks. And welcome to everyone who has joined the webinar. Good evening to those of you in India, and good morning to those who have joined from Canada. I'd just like to open by saying that Parvez and I have known each other for a number of years, going back to his former career with UCAL, and Shankar and I go back decades. We've worked together on many connectivity projects involving India and Canada. So excited to make this presentation today, and looking forward to perhaps stimulating some new ideas around potential collaboration and technology partnerships with our region within Canada and perhaps more broadly in the country. Again, the agenda is up on the screen at the moment. So I will begin with a brief introduction to Saskatchewan, and then segue into an overview of Innovation Saskatchewan, who we are, what we do, and I will touch, excuse me, on federal government innovation programming, that we interact with and engage with, and then finish with some thoughts around existing collaboration programs that are in place between Canada and India, and leave perhaps about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So many of you are probably wondering where specifically is Saskatchewan. Of course, we're in the heart of Canada and in North America. It's a big place with a small population. You know, it's twice as large as Japan, as the slide says. We're an area of 651,000 square kilometers, populated by slightly under 1.2 million people. So, which equates to, I guess, what is known in India as a small city. In terms of the makeup of the province geographically, the top 2/3 of the province approximately are covered by forest and lakes. The bottom third is kind of the northern tip of the Great Plains of North America. We have about 27 million hectares of cultivated agricultural lands, which represents over 40% of the agricultural land in Canada. So we are known first and foremost as a large producer of food. We're also blessed with large potash reserves in Saskatchewan and also uranium deposits. And we are Canada's second largest oil producer. So as our former premier used to describe Saskatchewan, we are producers of food, fuel, and fertilizer. And that's what we are best known for internationally. Again, this quickly is a map of the sort of mineral resources across the province. So many of these have yet to be commercially developed. And here's just a few quick snapshots of what Saskatchewan looks like in the summertime. We have many freshwater lakes. In total, about 11% of Canada's freshwater resources. So on to Innovation Saskatchewan. Our mission, as we describe it, is to be an innovation catalyst, again, serving the needs of individuals, companies, and institutions. We were created by legislation that came into force 10 years ago in April of 2010. I guess we're broadly known as an economic development agency, but our focus is on supporting research and development activity in the province, science and technology development and deployment, and commercialization. We're known as a special operating agency. We report directly to a minister of government, and we're a sum total of 12 people in our group. So I always like to throw this slide in. It's kind of my Innovation 101 slide. I've learned over the years that innovation conjures up all sorts of different ideas, in people. I think even about the Canadian experience, going back about 30 years, when in Canada we launched, I think, our first innovation agenda. In those days, it was all about funding of research facilities and research infrastructure and research chairs at universities. So it was really what I would say the knowledge creation end of the innovation spectrum. In our world, we like to say that innovation has not happened until you've taken those ideas or knowledge produced by research or other experience and turned them into money in the case of economic innovation. There's also, I should give a nod to social innovation. There are many ideas and knowledge that are focused on improving, the livelihood of people. But simply put, the innovation is a process. It involves more than just creating knowledge. It's everything in between that and actual value being created by the process of innovation. So when we talk about the process of innovation, we like to refer to all those bits and pieces that are required to turn knowledge into value as an innovation ecosystem. In Saskatchewan, this is how we try to describe the components or main components of our innovation ecosystem. So it takes academia that are working in the research community, for example. Various government programs at both provincial and federal levels. It takes private sector corporations as participants in the system. various other agencies and non-government organizations, and tech companies themselves. Again, a lot of our focus is in the technology world, so we have that. And then, of course, the all-important investment capital and venture capital. So those are kind of the main components of what we describe as our innovation ecosystem. Just breaking it down in a little more detail by this slide. So when we talk about what makes up our innovation ecosystem in Saskatchewan, if I start again with academia, we have the two major universities in the province: University of Saskatchewan here in Saskatoon, where I reside, University of Regina, Saskatchewan Polytechnic, which is has a number of campuses spread across the province, and then there are a number of other regional colleges. Within the provincial government, we have the Ministry of Agriculture delivers a research program called the Ag Development Fund, which is used in large part to develop new agricultural crop strains that the primary agriculture producers grow. And in particular, the Crop Development Center at the University of Saskatchewan is the focal point for this activity. Over the years, since the 1970s, they have developed more than 400 new crop strains that have been grown in the province. And in particular, one that would maybe resonate with India is the production of pulse crops like lentils and chickpeas. Going back 30 or so years in Saskatchewan, the only pulse crop that was grown in small quantity would have been field peas. But due to the efforts of the Crop Development Center, there have been several varieties of lentils and chickpeas and such that have been developed for our growing conditions, and to the point now where Saskatchewan is Canada's largest exporter of pulses, and many of them going to India. Of course, Innovation Saskatchewan, which is us, we provide funding for a number of research agencies that I'll speak to shortly. And we also have, some internal research and innovation support programming. And then Innovation Place, which is a research park where we are situated at the University of Saskatchewan campus. It's been a work in progress since about 1980, so it's been 40 years in the making. Our particular campus has housed as many as, I think, 3,500 workers in various walks of life, either in biotech or ICT related technology development or minerals research and so on. Innovation Place also has a campus at the University of Regina campus, focused more so on ICT related activity. The Ministry of Immigration and Career Training, or ICT as we affectionately refer to them, they're involved in a lot of working to fill skills gaps that we currently experience in the province. Our tech sector has been growing quite rapidly in recent years, and of course there's quite a dearth of skilled workers that are in constant requirement and need. It could be software developers, software engineers, or people with basic coding skills in various computer languages. So immigration is something that we rely on quite heavily to help fill a lot of these gaps in our tech workforce. Ministry of Trade and Export Development, they are actively involved in a number of programs, investment attraction related types of programs and such, and we work closely with them. Federal government, of course, has a number of operations that are active in the province, for example, the National Research Council Industrial Research Assistance Program, which works with startups, tech startups and smaller companies who are developing technologies. They're often looking for assistance, to do a market assessment or funding to support the actual technology development. So they're quite active here in the province. The federal Department of that we call ISED, or Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. It's actually quite a large federal department, which I'll speak to further on in the presentation. But they have, several programs in the research and innovation space. They also fund Western Economic Diversification, which is one of several regional economic development agencies that the federal government has across Canada. And WED is the one that focuses on Western Canada. Then there's something we refer to as CFI, or the Canada Foundation for Innovation, which is a arm's length agency that funds in part the capital cost of new research infrastructure and equipment for the academic community primarily. And finally, this SDTC, or the Sustainable Development Technologies Canada, which is focused largely on clean tech type of company development, and they have a variety of programs to support technology development and demonstration, and more recently a seed capital program for early stage clean tech companies. Then we have Global Affairs Canada, which again, I'd like to give a nod to a couple of my Canadian colleagues, which I believe are in the webinar today. I think Scott McLeod in particular from the High Commission in India. Global Affairs, of course, is the connector, between the various regions and provinces in Canada and the world. They operate the network of embassies, high commissions, and consulates general globally, and they have the Trade Commissioner Service, which really provides the connectivity between Canadian companies and potential partners or clients elsewhere internationally. And lastly, I'd want to point out NSERC, or the Natural Sciences Engineering Research Council. They're one of 3 federal funding agencies that fund academic research activity at universities across the country. And this one in particular has a number of programs to sort of facilitate or encourage joint research activity between academic researchers and industry. And so it's quite active here in Saskatchewan. Moving on to private sector corporations, and just have a list of some of the larger ones in the province that are quite important in our ecosystem. Nutrien, of course, is one of the large potash companies. Farm Credit Corporation. Cameco is one of the large uranium producers here, who coincidentally also exports uranium to India. And Federated Cooperatives Limited, which is a large refining company and food retailer. In terms of agencies that are important to our system, we have everything from, Sask Tech is the tech industry's sort of association that essentially advocates to government with respect to needs and issues, perhaps constraining growth of the tech sector. And we work closely with them around things like talent development programs, and a number of other related things. SREDA and EDR, these are our economic development agencies for the 2 larger cities in the province, for Saskatoon and Regina. AgWest Bio is an agency that does a lot of work to promote biotech research and commercialization, and they support the development of small companies in that particular space. Cultivator is it's a tech incubator program in the city of Regina that works out of the Innovation Place Research Park. And then lastly, Collabs, which is a tech incubator program operating here in Saskatoon out of the Innovation Place Research Park. And we are a partial funder of their programming. The tech sector in Saskatchewan, as I mentioned, it's quite vibrant and growing rapidly. Just had a recent study completed, which concluded that there are over 52,000 tech workers, in the province, of which 31,000 are work directly with what we call core tech companies, whose business is development and production of technology products and services. The other 20,000 workers are embedded in traditional industry in the province. So they might be software workers or technology or engineering support workers, in traditional, agriculture or mining or oil and gas industries, for example. It's there's about 5,000 tech companies that are registered in the province. Many of them small, companies, but again, it's the industry pays quite well on average. The average pay for a tech worker in Saskatchewan is 76,000. So, many people make considerably more than that. It represents a significant portion of our province's GDP. About 5.6% of our GDP, or 4.7 billion in direct contributions. And as I said before, it's a high growth sector. In terms of venture and seed capital, we have a number of groups. There's the Connexus Venture Capital program. There's WestCap, which is a labor working venture capital program. BIC, which is a private sort of seed capital program. Golden Venture Partners, SNC and SCN. SCN is basically an angel investor network in the province. So that's, sort of, in a nutshell, is what makes up our innovation ecosystem in greater detail. So what do we actually do at Innovation Saskatchewan? So, we focus on basically these 4 areas. We do support, innovation that, with government operations, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. We provide funding to several research institutes and programs. We support tech startups through funding of collabs and other programs like an angel investor tax credit program to incentivize early investment in pre-revenue tech startups, and then more broadly with the tech sector on issues around talent development and market access and so on. Moving on to our funded institutions, this is the list. I'll go through each of these in a little more detail. Starting with the Canadian light source, Synchrotron. This is Canada's one and only national synchrotron facility. It's been operating now since 2005. Underwent construction in 2000. And if you recall me mentioning the Canada Foundation for Innovation, when that program was created, this is the first project that was funded by the CFI, and so it's quite a beehive of activity. Nowadays, much of their effort is being focused on COVID-19 related research, either with looking at personal protective equipment, helping to accelerate the development of drug molecules for treatment of COVID-19, and disinfecting procedures, understanding the COVID molecule, in greater detail. So it's a very versatile scientific tool. Many scientists go through the facility every year. It's responsible for over 5,000 scientific publications, to date, and it's again, health, agriculture, energy and environment, and advanced materials are kind of broadly the categories where they conduct research. And so synchrotrons, I guess, are largely an academic research tool. But in our particular case, 25% of the research capacity is set aside for industrial users, again, to attempt to help build that bridge between the academic research community and industry. And synchrotrons have been no stranger to the pharmaceutical world. Again, it's been it's been a very popular tool, to speed the development of new drugs through processes such as protein crystallography and so on. But it also plays a very important role in other areas of medical imaging research, agriculture. There's a number of programs going on right now to understand, how plant structures and root systems actually ingest nutrients and moisture from the soil and so on. This is a picture of the synchrotron hull. In case you're curious, what does the inside of a synchrotron look like? This is and this is a relatively compact machine. It's I think about 86 meters, in diameter. Some synchrotrons in the world can have a ring as large as 1 kilometer, but this one is sort of a good compromise between size and functionality. Moving on to the next research institution that we fund, Vito Intervac, and again, this is known as again another large national science facility in Canada. It's got a level 3 biohazard containment facility. They can work on large animals up to the sizes of livestock and horses and so on. And it right now is the focal point for the development of a COVID-19 vaccine. Actually, very shortly moving into human clinical trials of a vaccine candidate, which has been developed at Vito Intervac earlier this spring. So again, I'm quite excited about that and hopeful that they do ultimately achieve success. And of course, it's one of many vaccine candidates under development globally, but this is one that's close to home that we have a direct hand in supporting. We also fund something known as the International Minerals Innovation Institute. This is a public-private partnership with the mining industry in the province, the large potash miners and uranium miners. There are several other research groups and educational institutions that are members of the IMII. So again, it's about focused on education and training programs that are perhaps unique to the mining industry, and secondly, to support research and development and deployment of new technologies to improve the efficiency and and the environmental characteristics of mining that goes on in the province. The Fedoric Center is basically a nuclear innovation, research and innovation center that was established 9 years ago in province. They kind of work in 4 areas: nuclear medicine and knowledge development. So a lot of that work centers around the development and testing of new radioisotopes for treatment of cancer and cancer diagnostics. And they operate a cyclotron facility which produces the radio isotopes and radiopharmaceuticals that are used in our local hospitals to run their PET-CT scanners. And they also export product to adjacent provinces periodically. The cyclotron is sized such that it has excess capacity to produce experimental isotopes for all types of research that go on in their Saskatchewan Center for Cyclotron Sciences. So it hosts both academic researchers and industry members who are developing various products in this space. They do a significant amount of work on material science related activities, nuclear energy systems. They provide sort of an unbiased third-party assessment of small modular reactor designs. And again, this is something that we are watching closely. Saskatchewan, along with Ontario and New Brunswick, recently signed an MOU to move toward the deployment of small modular reactors in the country. Again, we're probably still, up to 10 years out, pending the certification and commercialization of some of the designs that are in process right now. And anyhow, it's just quite an active institution of ours. The PTRC, or the Petroleum Technology Research Center, it funds research into oil extraction technologies and carbon capture and storage technologies. They kind of go hand in hand. So, as I mentioned, Saskatchewan is Canada's second largest oil producer. We have two kinds of oil in the province. There's light crude in the southeastern portion of the province, and then in the western side of the province we have heavy crude deposits. And it's a challenge to get a significant amount of that oil out of the oil-bearing formations with the existing technology. So it's a sort of a constant sort of struggle to keep developing new oil extraction technologies. And again, injecting CO2 into the oil formations has proven to be quite successful in extending the life of oil wells and such, and actually sequestering CO2 from one of our coal-fired power plants. Moving on, the Sask Research Foundation. Again, this is a provincial agency that supports collaborative health research in the province. So again, into medical device research or treatment research and so on. So again, we cover a broad spectrum of things. Moving into our programs, just a word about this picture that's up on the screen. This dates back to I think about 1918 or thereabouts. It was a University of Saskatchewan program that was looking at basically, I guess what we would call nowadays an early stage pyrolysis project, where they were heating wheat straw in a constrained environment and producing methane, or what they called in those days straw gas. So this particular car was configured to show that, to demonstrate that you could actually create a fuel to run a vehicle with other than petroleum or petrol products. Of course, in those days, petrol distribution and production was sort of hit and miss. So this was perceived as maybe an alternative energy source to run motor vehicles. So research and innovation has been around Saskatchewan and universities for quite some time. So our programs are listed on the right. I'll start with the Innovation Science Fund. This is basically a matching fund. Again, as I mentioned, the Canada Foundation for Innovation provides funding to support the purchase or building of research infrastructure and equipment. So our program matches CFI funding for research equipment that academic researchers require for their programming. So they apply to the CFI, and if they are awarded funding, then we match that funding through this particular program. And this program is also used to fund other research projects, outside of the matching program. And again, it's important, and it helps to keep highly qualified research personnel in the province doing what they like to do. The STSI, or Saskatchewan Technology Startup Incentive, this is an investment tax, non-refundable investor tax credit. And again, I mentioned earlier that we had a program to incentivize high net worth individuals investing in pre-revenue tech startups. Well, this is it. So if the way the program works, tech startups have to register and be certified for the program. So we have an arrangement with NRC IRAP to actually do a third-party vetting of the company's technology development and its market prospects. And if the answers are positive, then they can raise funding through this program. And so someone, for example, invests $100,000 into a startup, they can get up to $45,000 of that money refunded against taxes payable to the provincial government. And it's been a very successful program. It's been in operation now for about 2 years. And we have our Sask Advantage Innovation Fund. This is a research or a funding program where we will come in as a minority funder of public-private sort of research collaborations or technology demonstration collaboration projects. The picture in the lower right portion of the screen is of this is the drilling of a deep geothermal well in southeastern Saskatchewan. So we have at approximately 3,500 meters below surface what is known as the Deadwood Formation. Again, Saskatchewan used to be a large inland sea. And so essentially what still exists at that level is basically a large salt brine formation of heated water. It's approximately 120 degrees centigrade. And so this particular project is funded both federally and provincially to demonstrate that this deep saline formation can be tapped and used to generate electricity and perhaps use the surplus heat for running of horticultural operations and so on. But we also have projects related to mining, energy production, agricultural technologies development, manufacturing, education, healthcare. So right across the spectrum. We also run something known as Innovation Challenge. This is a program where we canvass our colleagues in other government ministries and agencies, to identify areas where they have service delivery gaps or dealing with particular issues that don't necessarily have an obvious solution. The one that's mentioned on the screen here is had to do with rural crime prevention and detection. And so in this particular case, an early stage tech company won the challenge and they received funding from Innovation Saskatchewan to develop what is about the size of a cigarette package, this device. It has accelerometers and GPS and 3G communication capability and other features built into it. So these are stashed or hidden within a high value asset. It could be a piece of farm equipment. It could be a vehicle, or it could be inside the door of a storage bin. And so if it detects movement that's not expected or other conditions, it will send a text message to the person or agency it's intended to notify. And so it's a way. It's basically a product to provide early detection of potentially a property crime in progress. And again, it's been quite well received. We have another program called the Maiden Saskatchewan Technology Program. And so this is one where we help tech companies who have developed a product which they believe can help government improve service delivery. And so it's so this is a case of a technology push program where we try to identify places where the technology could be used or adapted to improve government service delivery or safety and so on. And again, these are both programs that parallel similar programs at the federal government level as well. And we're in the process of just finalizing an agreement with the federal government to sort of merge our programs together. So just summarizing, if you're a tech startup, what other types of supports are there in the province? I mentioned that we have the incubators, Cultivator and Collabs, but there are other support organizations locally as well, something known as Square One, which is operated here at a city. There's the Women Entrepreneurs of Saskatchewan, which provide programming supports and other assistance to female entrepreneurs. I mentioned Innovation Saskatchewan, which is us. And then there are events like the Prairie Investment Forum and the Uniting the Prairies Startup Forum and so on. So again, is this speaking to things within our ecosystem to support, tech startups and, tech companies in general. So just moving on here, I've mentioned a number of these programs, but we work closely with our colleagues in federal government, to support research and innovation in Saskatchewan. And so, there's a lot more money available, through federal government programs than we can muster, provincially. So again, that's we work closely wherever we can to sort of leverage additional funding into various initiatives in province. So I mentioned the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development earlier, and within that department there are several programs and institutions. This is just a partial list of those that exist, but Innovation Canada, for example, contains a number of things like the I mentioned our MIST and Innovation Challenge program. They have the equivalents of those under this umbrella. There's something known as the Accelerated Growth Service, which basically pulls together resources across the federal government, and more recently adding in provincial resources to work with what are identified as high growth potential companies to help them accelerate their growth and export market development and such. The National Research Council Industrial Research Assistance Program, which I mentioned, they are crucial for a lot of the work that we do, both as assessors of technology, but also providing knowledge and support directly to tech startups and early stage tech companies. NSERC, I mentioned already, working with the academic community and industry to bring the two together. WD, our regional economic development agency in Western Canada, and we co-fund a number of things. For example, Collabs is one program that both WD and Innovation Saskatchewan together fund, but there are many others. The Strategic Innovation Fund, this is a large fund with several different funding streams, primarily focused on larger research and development initiatives of companies. I think their minimum contribution to a project is on the order of 10 million, and they typically will fund no more than about 30% of a project. So that would mean the overall project size is going to be 30 to 40 million and above. MyTax is a program that provides funding support for university students to take on job placements within industry. So and again, it's a very popular program. Our companies use it quite aggressively to offset the cost of bringing students into industry. So students gain experience in the real world. It gives the companies the ability to actually assess the qualities of particular individuals for potential future employment. The Canadian Space Agency, of course, funds a number of research programs related to space technologies. It could be space robotics or other technologies, automation, and so on, that contribute to the elements of Canada's space program. Canada Foundation for Innovation, I already mentioned. And Sustainable Development Technologies Canada, of course, as I mentioned them as well, and funding things in the clean tech space. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Global Affairs Canada, because really they would be very important for, in terms of helping to facilitate, partnerships between Canada and India. So they operate, for example, the Canada International Innovation Program, which basically facilitates research and technology partnerships between companies in Canada and internationally. So there are a number of countries that are partners in this program. India is one of them. And I just wanted to bring to your attention today that the Canada-India 2020 Collaborative Industrial Research and Development call for proposals is open now. And this is one where I would encourage you, if you're looking for a Canadian technology partner, or for either to co-develop a technology and potentially to gain North American market access, this is a program worth considering. From the India side, you would want to explore this program through the India-Canada Collaborative Industrial Research and Development Program, which is operated by GITA. I've thrown up the website, that you can go to actually find out more information about this particular program. But again, the call for proposals is open until September 16th, so GITA can, through their channels, work to help you find a Canadian partner. We can also work through Parvis and myself to, if you're looking for something specific in Saskatchewan, we can certainly help to do some pathfinding in that area. And it covers a large spectrum of technology areas and industries, as a note here on the slide. So maybe just to finish up, in terms of other partnering and collaboration opportunities, they're certainly in software technology development support. As I mentioned before, we have a chronic shortage of software developers and programmers in province, and of course, a similar situation exists across Canada. So there's always opportunities to do contract software development if you have a cluster of people with certain programming skills that might be in demand by a local company here. Again, technology partnerships and joint technology partnership, these can be explored outside of the previous program I had mentioned. Again, for Canadian and North American market entry, we're happy to work with companies in the pathfinding role and to identify soft landing support services, for example, in our research parks. And then lastly, research collaboration. I pointed out the Canadian Light Source and Vito Intervac, for example. There's always collaboration opportunities that are available, between the academic communities, but also companies who have an interest in partnering on programs. And there are several mechanisms or variations that can be applied. If it all depends on who wants to own the IP at the end of the day. If the IP can reside in the public domain, then typically there's minimal cost to collaborate. On the other hand, if you're wanting to develop proprietary IP, well then you have to pick up the costs associated with its development. So I'll stop there. I promised I would leave some time for questions, so we'll turn it over to Parvis and his team then.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. It is very impressive presentation. I think you have covered a lot, and there is already some questions in the Q&A. If you're okay, can I just read out and then moderate the questions? Yeah. So, the first question is, which are the various ways of getting funds to the educational institutions for research activities? I think you have already covered broadly about what are the funding opportunities. Maybe from your presentation, I could say that India and in Canada collaborative project is one where the institutions, research institutions, can be one of the consortium partner. So one industry need to be there. And I have seen your very impressive facility on the Canadian Light Source. In fact, when I met your colleagues, they were saying they're looking someone who is want to do a research on RISE and education institutions. Even the postdoc scholars can go there. So I think these are the things which I could read it from the presentation. But having said that, can you want to touch upon anything specific for education institutions?
Well, there are, I guess, a number of programs. Of course, there's some that are operated, at the federal level through NSERC and international collaboration support. We also have, some, programs. Again, I think through our Ministry of Agriculture, the Ag Development Fund, for example, will support, collaboration. Research collaboration into the development of crop strains, and for the actual area of greatest interest here, of course, more recently has been with pulse crops, the development of new lentil varieties or flava bean varieties and such. So where there's common interest and common benefit, there are a number of research funding programs in Saskatchewan and in Canada that could be matched up with research support programs in India, through the Department of Biotechnology and several others.
Yeah, that's yeah. And this next question. There is a question. I think it's more like they're asking, like, if any NGO gives funds to the research activities to other research institutions, how it will get benefited. So I presume that they're talking about institutions like NRC and all, how they're going to benefit while funding these research institutions.
Okay, I'm not sure I totally understand the question. So if the question is, is research funding available from these institutions for companies?
Yeah, I think it's a generic question on if NGO gives funds for this research, what in turn NGO going to get it? I think that's the question.
Okay, if an NGO uses funds for research.
Yeah.
I guess we're referring to the intellectual property ownership at the end of the research. Is that what you're looking at? Okay.
Yeah, that are more of a societal need. That could be another thing. And the next question is, what is the scope for funding for biological science, food science, and nutrition? Any funding resource for promotion of traditional healthcare practices?
Yeah, there is. I neglected to mention, some of the other research institutions we have in Saskatchewan. There's, for example, the Global Institute for Food Security would be a logical partner for some of the funding around nutrition and food development types of projects. They're also tied in with a broader network. What we have in Canada was funded about a year and a half ago, are a number of super clusters focused on different areas. And in Saskatchewan, we are home to the agriculture super cluster. And so this is a sort of a jointly funded network of industry supported by federal government funding. And so again, they have a number of local companies and research groups who are interested and prepared to partner potentially with international researchers, around again development of new value-added food products or nutrition improvement of existing products and so on. So there are those potential sources of research funding and product development.
Yeah, yeah, you are right. And there are some questions related to maybe from the academicians, from the faculty. They're asking, is there any possibility to do a postdoctoral research or a faculty fellowship in Saskatchewan?
I would say the short answer is yes. We host, I think, several postdoctoral researchers. A number of them do work, at the Canadian Light Source. Others work at Vito Intervac, in the, in the vaccine development world and related activities. And still others are, work on a variety of research programs at the universities. So yes, there are a number of opportunities, and I guess my best recommendation there would be probably to contact the international offices at the universities of Saskatchewan, or to contact the Canadian Light Source or Vito Intervac directly to inquire about opportunities there.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, that would be fine. And also, like, I'm just talking to the audience. Like, if anybody wanted any specific thing to do, you can approach us, write us an email to CIC, CEO@cic.ventures. We will maybe connect to Dr. Andy or Dr. Shankar, or anyone who may be useful to help us in this regard. And so there is some questions related to, is there any business plan competitions or hackathons happening in the Saskatchewan? Maybe the startups or the student startups can participate and avail and build relationship.
Yes, there are hackathons, held on a regular basis, and of course nowadays with a lot of these things occurring virtually, there's no reason why we couldn't have participation from folks in India. So I can endeavor to provide you with information on any upcoming hackathons in the coming weeks and months, which could potentially be open to outside participation as well.
Yeah. I think last time when I came also, I visited Collabs. I think they are doing a good job. I think we are already in the plans to collaborate with Collabs. So maybe we can think about CIC jointly with Collabs, hosting some hackathons for startups. Maybe with your support, we will try to do that.
Okay. Yes, that's something we can certainly explore.
Yeah. And so there are some questions like, do your organization sanction fund, in the sense they are probably asking, is the Innovation Saskatchewan will fund directly, or they through organization it will fund?
Sorry, I missed the second half of your question.
No, there is a question that whether your organization, Innovation Saskatchewan, can fund for any research or collaboration, or through your institutions you will fund.
Well, we fund both ways. As I mentioned, most of our money is earmarked for the institutions that we support, and they in turn run their various research and technology development programs. So they would have to be approached directly. But we do have a number of in-house programs, like our Sask Advantage Innovation Fund, the Saskatchewan Technology Startup Incentive, and we have just recently, I forgot to mention, we are launching an ag tech support program as well for ag tech startups. But this will be operated through the SAFE program umbrella. So it's a combination of things, but the majority of our money is allocated to the institutions that we fund. So if there's a particular area of interest that fits with one of the institutions, that would be the place to approach. But again, our in-house programming probably is more relevant to companies that are already situated geographically here, although that may mean that we could have a local tech company who is looking for a partner in India with particular expertise, which could then form part of a project under our SAFE program, for example.
Yeah. So yeah, I think some of them, that's one. Some of them have asked for the PPT and things. So actually, we are planning to record this video and then put it in a YouTube, and then I think many people can who have missed this can watch it. That's okay with Mr. Andy to you?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. So I think we have covered majority of the questions. There are some specific questions probably which we could answer offline. And thanks again, Mr. Andy, for your time and valuable time. And sorry to wake you up in the early morning and then in this COVID scenario. And you have been always very supportive during my trips to Innovation Saskatchewan. And we would like to build this collaboration more, and both for startups and academicians to take things forward. I also would like to thank Dr. Shankar, who is instrumental in building our relationship. I think we will, soon move forward on these things. And Canadian Light Source, I feel, is one of the highly potential research collaboration place where we should encourage more, participations from India and Canada. Also, the Indo collaborative Canada collaborative project. We're already working with some of our startups to apply. Thanks to your support, we will keep move forward. And again, thanks again so much for your time, Sandy.
Very much appreciated. And I was, happy to participate, and look forward to following up with some of your clients, and determining what sort of partnerships we can develop as a result. So once again, thank you everyone for participating today, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, and see you. And now we will end the webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.